For over 6 decades, the world never knew the hidden chaos behind Bewitched, a show that masqueraded as wholesome suburban fantasy while its set seethed with scandal, rebellion, and tragedy. In 1972, at Stage 3 of Screen Gem Studios, cameras captured Francine walking onto set in nothing but a kitchen apron, transforming from Venus incarnate to a living embodiment of forbidden desire, shocking the crew, silencing directors, and breaking the rigid moral codes of 1970s American television. The scene, intended as fleeting comedy, lasted only seconds, yet it became a seismic moment in TV history. York delivered her lines about household duties while Elizabeth Montgomery and Dick Sargent exchanged genuine shock, caught witnessing a defiance of every established television taboo. Meanwhile, Montgomery, weary of repetitive spells, kitchen sets, and endless nose twitches, secretly abandoned her bra, a quiet act of feminist rebellion that subtly liberated her character, showing housewives that even the smallest invisible acts could reclaim autonomy. ABC executives monitored necklines but failed to notice Montgomery's silent protest, her silk blouses draping naturally, her silhouette a quiet whisper of independence. While audiences adored Samantha, the cameras recorded a silent revolution hidden in plain sight, a nuanced challenge to societal norms as Montgomery used celebrity, artistry, and courage to subtly reshape television history. Every glance, every posture, every barely there gesture became a statement, a rebellion disguised as routine suburban magic, signaling a shift that only decades later would be fully understood. Behind the picture-perfect suburban world, life on set was far from enchanting. Dick York, the original Darren, suffered from chronic back pain originating from an old injury during the filming of A Came to Cordura with Gary Cooper. And by season 5, the agony became unbearable. The crew constructed slanted walls for him to lean against between takes, but even prescription painkillers failed to ease his suffering. York's dependence on medication made him unpredictable, forgetting lines, stumbling through dialogue, and sometimes collapsing mid-scene, necessitating constant reshoots. By January 1969, during the filming of Daddy Does His Thing, York collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, never returning to the show. Dick Sargent replaced him, but his arrival sparked immediate tension, especially with Agnes Moorehead, the formidable Endora. Moorehead, a 4-time Oscar nominee with a prestigious theater background, resented being typecast as a witch, negotiating to appear in only 8 of 12 episodes. Yet the show's immense popularity trapped her into repeating the role. Behind her poised exterior, Moorehead wrestled with her artistic ambitions, bringing subtle hostility to the set that only heightened the existing tensions. Supporting cast members faced their own battles. Alice Pierce, diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer, filmed from a wheelchair until her death in 1966, seamlessly replaced by Sandra Gould. Morris Evans rewrote scripts mid-shoot to maintain his Shakespearean pride. David White increasingly relied on alcohol to endure typecasting frustrations. Even the child actors, Aaron and Diane Murphy, were shielded from the volatile adult drama, filmed separately to protect them from the creeping instability that threatened the production. Elizabeth Montgomery's personal life added yet another layer of intrigue. Married to producer William Asher, she appeared to have a stable Hollywood marriage, but Asher's well-known affairs with guest stars and staff created an undercurrent of tension. Montgomery endured these indiscretions quietly, but a new director, Richard Michaels, arrived in 1971 with a deep understanding of her frustration and artistic ambition. Michaels recognized Montgomery as more than a nose-twitching commodity and offered her the chance to explore her creativity beyond the rigid confines of the suburban kitchen. Their professional collaboration quickly turned personal, sparking a discreet affair that both empowered Montgomery and ultimately pushed her toward ending Bewitched. By early 1972, the show's final season was mired in barely controlled hostility. Montgomery leveraged her 20% ownership of Bewitched, granting her financial independence and the leverage to defy Asher's threats and ABC's unprecedented monetary offers. Her career-best performances during this turbulent period masked the brewing storm behind the scenes, blending artistry with subtle rebellion. Montgomery's bralesque defiance, her unapologetic choices, and her romance with Michaels became intertwined with the show itself, transforming Samantha's quiet relinquishing of magical powers into a layered metaphor for women asserting agency even within restrictive societal frameworks. The infamous 1972 Stage 3 filming of Bewitched's Rome episode captured Francine York in her scandalous apron, Venus incarnate, striding across the set while Montgomery and Sargent stared in genuine astonishment. The scene was heavily censored for broadcast, but the uncut footage remained hidden in Screen Gems vaults for 61 years, a time capsule of Hollywood daring and rebellion. Television standards were strict. Navels were forbidden, cleavage measured, morality rigidly enforced. Yet York's brief walk across the frame subverted every expectation. Meanwhile, Montgomery's braless rebellion continued subtly. Silk blouses draped naturally, necklines and hemlines appearing unchanged to censors. But the untrained eye noticed the shift in posture, the subtle assertion of autonomy within the role. This quiet defiance coincided with the women's liberation movement sweeping America, aligning Montgomery's actions with broader societal shifts, though invisible to the casual viewer. Through these small gestures, she demonstrated that rebellion could be silent, radical, and deeply personal, and that even the most wholesome television could carry seeds of social change hidden in plain sight. The juxtaposition of fantasy on screen and turmoil behind it revealed the complex interplay of artistry, society, and human courage that defined Bewitched's legacy. As the final seasons progressed, the show's pressures revealed themselves in tragic ways. Dick York's suffering led to addiction and unpredictable behavior. Sargent faced hostility from Moorhead, Pierce succumbed to ovarian cancer, and other cast members quietly battled personal demons. Agnes Moorehead's insistence on artistic dignity clashed with the show's formulaic humor. David White's frustration over typecasting intensified with alcohol. Morris Evans challenged scripts to assert his Shakespearean ideals. Even the child actors were affected, shielded from the chaos but aware, on some subconscious level, of the tension surrounding them. Yet despite all these hidden struggles, Bewitched remained a ratings success. Its polished magic concealing the human suffering and silent acts of defiance that defined its creation. Production staff became experts at continuity, cameramen adapted to York's limitations, and sound engineers compensated for medication-induced lapses, all while the public consumed a seamless, cheerful fantasy. Behind the camera, tensions were palpable, yet Montgomery's quiet rebellion and unwavering professionalism ensured that the show delivered a flawless veneer to millions of viewers who had no inkling of the turmoil behind the curtains. Francine York's presence, Elizabeth Montgomery's subtle defiance, and the complex interpersonal dynamics created an atmosphere where every small gesture carried meaning. The audience saw only light-hearted fantasy, but each scene concealed layers of silent resistance, unspoken frustrations, and daring innovation. Montgomery's braless silhouette became a secret symbol of empowerment, a nuanced protest hidden in plain sight, while York's scandalous apron scene served as a fleeting yet groundbreaking moment in television history, demonstrating the medium's capacity to challenge societal norms without explicit confrontation. These gestures, invisible to network censors yet palpable to the keen observer, revealed a nuanced rebellion against both industry limitations and cultural expectations, quietly shifting the boundaries of what television could represent. The contrast between Samantha's on-screen submission and Montgomery's off-screen agency created a tension that enriched every episode, infusing even mundane domestic scenes with a layered complexity that contemporary audiences could not perceive but modern viewers now recognize as revolutionary. Meanwhile, the human cost of fame and relentless production pressures became tragically evident. Dick York's pain and addiction, Agnes Moorehead's career frustrations, and the deaths of Alice Pierce, Marion Lorne, and others highlighted the hidden toll of Hollywood success. These losses, often concealed from public view, gave rise to whispers of a supernatural curse, a narrative fueled by the eerie regularity with which cast members succumbed to illness and misfortune. Yet the truth was more mundane and tragic. Mortality's random cruelty, amplified by the high-stress environment, relentless filming schedules, and physical and emotional strain, shaped the trajectory of the cast's lives. The surviving actors, like Aaron Murphy, bore witness to the extraordinary combination of artistry, rebellion, and tragedy that had defined Bewitched, preserving its legacy for future generations. Each passing year heightened the sense of myth surrounding the show, transforming its historical narrative into a tapestry of courage, scandal, and resilience, woven together by the invisible threads of human struggle. In 2015, decades after the original airing, digital archivist Sarah Chan stumbled upon the lost, uncut footage of Francine York's infamous apron scene while converting Screen Gems reels for streaming preservation. The discovery revealed moments that had been censored for more than 60 years. York walking as Venus incarnate, Montgomery's burlesque rebellion, and subtle acts of defiance hidden in everyday gestures. Legal and cultural questions immediately arose: how to release the footage, whether estates would object, and how modern audiences would interpret scenes that were scandalous in the 1970s yet tame by contemporary standards. The revelation offered historians, fans, and feminist scholars a new lens through which to view the show. No longer merely lighthearted fantasy, Bewitched now appeared as a nuanced negotiation between tradition, cultural norms, and subtle acts of empowerment. A series in which small rebellions quietly reshaped perceptions of gender, autonomy, and television's possibilities. Meanwhile, the human cost of fame and relentless production pressures became tragically evident. Dick York's pain and addiction, Agnes Moorehead's career frustrations, and the deaths of Alice Pierce, Marion Lorne, and others highlighted the hidden toll of Hollywood success. These losses, often concealed from public view, gave rise to whispers of a supernatural curse, a narrative fueled by the eerie regularity with which cast members succumbed to illness and misfortune. Yet the truth was more mundane and tragic: mortality's random cruelty, amplified by the high-stress environment, relentless filming schedules, and physical and emotional strain, shaped the trajectory of the cast's lives. The surviving actors, like Aaron Murphy, bore witness to the extraordinary combination of artistry, rebellion, and tragedy that had defined Bewitched, preserving its legacy for future generations. Each passing year heightened the sense of myth surrounding the show, transforming its historical narrative into a tapestry of courage, scandal, and resilience, woven together by the invisible threads of human struggle. In 2015, decades after the original airing, digital archivist Sarah Chan stumbled upon the lost, uncut footage of Francine York's infamous apron scene while converting Screen Gems reels for streaming preservation. The discovery revealed moments that had been censored for more than 60 years. York walking as Venus incarnate, Montgomery's burlesque rebellion, and subtle acts of defiance hidden in everyday gestures. Legal and cultural questions immediately arose: how to release the footage, whether estates would object, and how modern audiences would interpret scenes that were scandalous in the 1970s yet tame by contemporary standards. The revelation offered historians, fans, and feminist scholars a new lens through which to view the show. No longer merely lighthearted fantasy, Bewitched now appeared as a nuanced negotiation between tradition, cultural norms, and subtle acts of empowerment. A series in which small rebellions quietly reshaped perceptions of gender, autonomy, and television's possibilities. Montgomery's burlesque scenes and York's scandalous footage became the centerpiece of discussions about feminist defiance, body autonomy, and resistance within restrictive systems. Fans and scholars alike recognized that Samantha's relinquishing of magical powers mirrored the actress's own assertion of agency, highlighting the subtle interplay between on-screen fantasy and off-screen reality. The rediscovered footage went viral, not because it was overtly shocking, but because it represented courage, creativity, and the quiet reshaping of cultural norms. For decades, audiences had been enchanted by Samantha's magical charm, unaware that the real magic occurred behind the camera, in the tiny, revolutionary gestures of a woman asserting her independence while navigating an industry designed to control her. This realization recontextualized the show, transforming it from a charming domestic fantasy into a historical artifact of hidden rebellion and female empowerment. The final season of Bewitched was a microcosm of tension, rebellion, and artistry. Montgomery's personal affair with Michaels, her professional defiance, and the hidden struggles of the cast created a complex web of relationships, emotions, and silent statements. Asher's anger, threats, and attempts to control the production collided with Montgomery's financial independence and quiet courage. Every scene became a delicate negotiation. Montgomery balanced her artistic integrity, subtle rebellion, and on-screen duties, delivering career-best performances despite the charged atmosphere. The contrast between public perception and private reality encapsulated the tension at the heart of Hollywood production. Audiences saw flawless magic, laughter, and fantasy, while the people creating it navigated a battlefield of illness, addiction, ambition, and secret romance. This interplay of visible performance and invisible struggle is what gives Bewitched its lasting significance and enduring fascination. The toll of fame and stress was compounded by mortality. Within 30 years, nearly all major cast members had passed. Alice Pierce to cancer, Agnes Moorehead to uterine cancer, Paul Lynde to heart failure, Dick York to emphysema, Dick Sargent to prostate cancer, and Elizabeth Montgomery herself to colon cancer just weeks after diagnosis. The rapid succession of losses contributed to the myth of a curse, but in reality, it reflected the combination of stress, medication, exposure to long hours on set, and the indiscriminate nature of human mortality. Only Erin Murphy survived from the original child actors, a living witness to the triumphs, tragedies, and quiet rebellions that had shaped Bewitched. The rediscovered footage allowed modern audiences to appreciate the courage, creativity, and resilience of these actors, whose personal struggles had always remained hidden behind the polished veneer of television fantasy. Today, streaming platforms preserve the full legacy of Bewitched, including Francine York's uncut scenes, Montgomery's braless rebellion, and the subtle acts of defiance that define the show's final seasons. Scholars and fans alike recognize the series not just as family entertainment, but as a complex negotiation between tradition, emerging social movements, and individual courage. The magic of Bewitched lies not in spells, twinkling effects, or humorous antics, but in the historical reality of actors asserting autonomy, pushing boundaries, and quietly shaping cultural perceptions, often at great personal cost. Elizabeth Montgomery's quiet rebellion, Frances York's scandalous courage, and the perseverance of the cast behind the camera created a show that entertained millions while simultaneously reflecting and advancing social change, proving that true magic is as much about courage, agency, and resilience as it is about fantasy. The rediscovery of hidden footage has transformed the way we view the series, revealing that even behind the most innocent entertainment, profound acts of bravery and subversive genius were unfolding, invisible to contemporary audiences but immortal in history.